We're going to talk more in detail now about the humanitarian situation in Gaza with Arwa Damon, the founder of humanitarian organization Inara. Arwa, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today on France 24. You're in constant contact with your permanent team there. What are they telling you about the effect, first of all, these torrential rains are now having on an already devastating situation?
Well, to add to that report that you just broadcast there that showed visually just how horrific the conditions are, we need to also keep in mind that it's not just rainwater that is causing this flooding, right? That is not just water, that is water mixed with sewage. And so that is causing an extraordinary rise in all sorts of diseases to spread throughout Gaza. And putting that into the context of Gaza being a place where there is grossly inadequate medical care, you can imagine what that is doing to the population. And the tragedy is that a lot of these diseases, when they are left untreated, can end up being fatal. For example, diarrhea is the number one killer of children under the age of 5. We also have another baby that is reported to have died over the last 24 hours of hypothermia, just 2 years old. And there's also reports of another building that has collapsed because of these rainwaters. If we look at the numbers of, for example, what was let in by Israel to Gaza in November, only 9% of humanitarian aid trucks were actually shelter items. And so we just need to think because, look, all of us have ended up going outside and being completely drenched in an unexpected downpour, but we're able to go indoors, we're able to take a warm shower, we're able to bundle up. What would you do if you could not do that? How would you keep your children warm? How would you stop them from shivering and being drenched to the bone if all of your clothes are wet, if your blankets are wet, if your mattress is wet? How do you stop your children from, best case scenario, getting sick in that kind of a context? And this is why we keep re-emphasizing that there is a need, A, for more aid trucks to go into Gaza, because we're only at about half the numbers of aid trucks specifically that had been agreed upon, but also for those aid trucks to be carrying more and more shelter items. There are thousands of trucks waiting for permission by Israel to be allowed to enter Gaza that contain shelter items, tents, tarpaulins, warm clothing, boots. I mean, look at what children are having to wear when they're trying to navigate these sorts of conditions. And the thing is, at the core of it, is that this is very much a resolvable challenge if and only if Israel and the US, it must be said, do allow for these trucks to enter the Gaza Strip.
Indeed, but in the meantime, what are teams like your own who are there, who are trying to help, actually able to do to affect people who are affected, or to help people who are affected not just by the rain, but by disease, illness, as you were saying earlier?
Look, everyone has been in the same position that basically we've been in since this all began. And I think the other tragedy of this is that I'm effectively telling you the same thing that I could have been telling you a year ago or a year and a half ago. We do what we can with the little that we have. We end up purchasing quite a few items on the local market, but what this does is one, increase the cost to us in terms of the items that we're purchasing, but also it means that what we're able to deliver to people is in significantly smaller quantities than it would be should our aid trucks be let into Gaza. Inara, for example, does run two primary care centers. One is in a fixed location, the other is a roving team. And we try to reach as many people as we can, but our capacities continue to be limited because of the conditions and the restrictions that we continue to face. And this is why aid organizations keep saying over and over again, let our trucks in, we can get this job done. We've proven that we can do it in the past. But when we're being consistently handcuffed and blocked in terms of our capabilities, we really end up, jumping through hoops and trying to get creative when it comes to what we're actually able to deliver to the population.
And just break it down for us in the most simplest terms possible. What will it take really to get those aid trucks in?
Look, it's very straightforward. The United States, President Trump needs to put pressure on the Israelis, on Netanyahu, to actually open up more crossings, clear more trucks, and bring about the end to these bureaucratic blockades that prevent aid trucks from going into Gaza. The Israelis came up with this sort of re-registration process back in August, which my organization attempted to do, as did a number of other organizations. But all of these re-registrations are still pending, which then in turn, Israel says to us, well, look, you're not re-registered. We're not going to let your trucks in. Some of us are able to get things through with partner organizations. But again, all this does is limit our capacity when it comes to being able to get in the quantities, and not just the quantities, but the proper materials that are needed. There are all sorts of arbitrary denials of trucks because of items that Israel at the last minute decides it's not going to permit entry into Gaza. But again, if we're going to dilute it into its simplest sentence, the United States needs to put pressure on the Israelis to stop blocking our capacity to help the population of Gaza.
Arwa, thanks so much for that. Arwa Damon, the founder of the humanitarian organization Inara. Thanks.